What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Maximum Freedom with Mike. I'm your host, Mike, coming at you from my basement studio office that I like to affectionately call the dungeon. How's everybody this fine Monday morning? Hopefully you had a great weekend. Valentine's Day was Friday. Hopefully not too many of you guys screwed up and got your girl the wrong thing. After all, remember, Cecile Richards says that they need abortions and birth control. Don't forget. All right? Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well again. Before I kick off into some of the stuff I want to talk about, I want to say that I have a Twitter account. It is at, the at sign, capital S, capital R, EBEL 1983. Please go ahead, get on Twitter, follow me. I'm about to launch some really cool stuff. I've got a website that I'm starting with a blog called maxfreewithmike.com. That's maxfreewithmike.com. That is freshly up. I haven't actually posted any content yet. I'm going to do some blog posts today and, of course, embed this podcast there. So, again, that's maxfreewithmike.com. And also, be sure that you follow me at Twitter at srebel1983. All right? All right. Now, I want to talk about something that has been on my mind and my heart for some time, but I especially felt like it was necessary to talk about it today. And that's that I am sick of the Republicrats. Allow me to explain. America's addiction to the two-party system is slowly destroying the republic. Okay? The founding fathers of this country were very weary of political parties, and for a good reason. Political parties, they tend to stifle independent thinking, the consideration of ideas and principles, and instead of engaging a politician about their principles and beliefs, we just look for the little letter next to their name, and we vote for that person, assuming that they belong to the party we identify with, so they must hold to our belief system, right? Well, now the obvious problem with this is that in our day, both Democrats and Republicans technically belong to the same party. Most senators and congressmen on both sides of the aisle are progressives who think the answer to our country's problems is more government intervention. Conservative Republicans have lost their distinction from their Democrat counterparts. Republican ideology used to fall along similar lines of libertarian thought. Republicans back in the day, they used to support maximum individual liberty and limitations placed on the federal government by the Constitution. They believed wholeheartedly in the free market and its ability to balance itself out. Okay? That's what Republicans used to believe. Unfortunately, that's not quite what they believe now. And that's just so unfortunate that they've lost their way. Republicans like Robert Taft. I don't know if you guys have heard of Robert Taft. He's someone I've just recently learned about. Now, back in his day, he was considered the standard for what republicanism looked like. Here's a pretty good, concise summary of his beliefs in his own words. Check out this quote that I found. And when I say liberty, I do not simply mean what is referred to as free enterprise. I mean liberty of the individual to think his own thoughts and live his own life as he desires to think and to live. The liberty of the family to decide how they wish to live, what they want to eat for breakfast and for dinner, and how they wish to spend their time. Liberty of a man to develop his ideas and get other people to teach those ideas, if he can convince them that they have some value to the world. Liberty of every local community to decide how its children shall be educated, how its local services shall be run, and who its local leaders shall be. Liberty of a man to choose his own occupation, and liberty of a man to run his own business as he thinks it ought to be run, as long as he does not interfere with the right of other people to do the same thing. Republicans don't believe in this anymore. They don't. It's amazing. All of those things are ideals that almost all libertarians hold to. But not Republicans. No, not in our day and age. And I think that is sad. that we have lost that. A lot of Republicans say they believe these things, but really they don't. At least not the politicians, anyway. Our founding fathers believed that we should be a nation that minds its own business and seeks diplomacy over war. War was something that was supposed to be avoided and only used as a last resort to defend ourselves. But these days, holding that kind of non-interventionist policy makes you enemies pretty quickly with most conservatives, and especially those who partake in the Republican Party. Republicans today no longer hold this view. Instead, they seem to look for every opportunity possible to stick our nose in somebody else's business and go to war. And Democrats, man, they do the same thing. Obama is, wanting to get us involved in Syria and, other places around the world and using drone strikes to take out supposed terrorists while all the time not caring about the collateral damage this causes. This is the same kind of things that Republicans now do and have for some time. I think it's shameful how far away Republicans have gotten from what a true Republican used to be, which was basically a libertarian. And that's what our founding fathers held to, those ideologies. And now we pretty much look like, the Democrat Party, the progressives. Now, President George W. Bush is a pretty darn good example of what I'm talking about here. During a debate with Al Gore way back in the day, Bush once said, now this is his quote, "I'm not so sure the United States is to go around the world and say, this is the way it's got to be. I think one way for us to end up being viewed as the ugly American is for us to go around the world saying, we do it this way, so should you." Wow. That sounds pretty darn libertarian. Now, when most libertarians express similar views on foreign policy as what President Bush did during that debate, we get labeled as isolationists. I mean, is it really isolationist to want to mind your own business and take care of your home country? To want to seek diplomacy rather than, blowing stuff up all the time? Sending our troops into harm's way unnecessarily? I mean, I believe in just war. I believe there are times and occasions when war is absolutely called for. But I believe that 99% of the war and things that we've been involved in over the last, who knows how long, have been the result of warmongering and a desire to be involved in the affairs of others and try to tell the world, what they should do, that every country should be like us. We've become the world's police, and I don't think that was in any way, shape, or form what our founders had intended us to be. Anyway, Bush also stated that if we act like an arrogant country, the world will hate us. That's very true, and I believe that mindset of being arrogant and sticking our nose in other people's business and trying to tell other countries how they need to do things as if we've got it all figured out, as if we're the bee's knees, which I do believe that the republic that was founded by our founding fathers and the free market system and the Constitution and the extreme limited federal government, all of that is the best system of government you can have. But I don't believe that it was, intended for us to go around and beat other countries over the head. I mean, that quote from Taft said that if we could convince others that our ideals have value, then that will persuade those who hold opposing views and ideals to come to our system of belief. Instead, we go in, blow crap up, and then expect people to just jump on board with our program. That's not doing at all what our founding fathers and what even good Republicans like Robert Taft believed. We've gotten far away from that. And I think as a result, that is what has led to us having so many problems. I don't know that that's 100% why we got attacked on 9/11. I don't know, and I'm not going to claim to know. But what I do know is that it sure didn't help. And it's not helping our position now. The rest of the world looks at us like we are the arrogant bullies, the morons, and it's because of our interventionist foreign policies. Right now, we have troops stationed in at least 130 different countries. You cannot tell me reasonably that this is necessary. And this isn't even taking into account all of the money being wasted in keeping these troops in these different places. I mean, you just can't tell me that this is a good use of resources and that we're not doing this for something other than the spread of democracy. Which, I don't even like democracy. I want a republic. Democracies are dangerous. It's always dangerous when the majority rules. We'll get into that some other time. Anyway, let's get back on to Bush here and this massively moronic two-party system. This type of foreign policy that Bush was talking about here, about us being an arrogant country and the world will hate us, and about needing to keep our nose out of other people's business and stop trying to make them do things the way we do things, is exactly the type of foreign policy our founders would have agreed with wholeheartedly. However, the foreign policy that Bush ran on and the type he put in place once he was in office were very, very different. Finding bin Laden, punishing those in Al-Qaeda who were involved in the attack on our nation is one thing, and I agree with that. But getting involved in nation building in Iraq is another. There was no weapons of mass destruction found. There was no evidence to prove that they had these things. There was no evidence to prove and tie any exact involvement that I know of. Now, I could be wrong here. That I know of tying Saddam Hussein to bin Laden and the attack that happened at 9/11. We did not need to go in there, remove him, overthrow their government, and then rebuild their nation. That was not our call to make. We should not have been involved in that. And that's the kind of nation building that, prior to becoming president, George W. Bush said was wrong. So he said one thing and then turned around and did the other. And the other thing that he did doesn't line up at all with the values of our founders or classic liberalism, which most Republicans fell into back in the day. No, it fell in line with progressive ideals. And it seemed more like nationalism, like building an empire, rather than seeking the good welfare of another country. This type of foreign policy, that is what a progressive would do. And I believe it wholeheartedly. And in fact, many progressive Democrats who were in office when Bush was president supported those actions. I could go on and on with more of what Bush did, as far as look at the Patriot Act and those massive growth of government intervention in the lives of public citizens, private citizens. Take, for example, the creation of Department of Homeland Security, another bloated government bureaucracy that doesn't do anything of what it's supposed to do and just ends up causing more problems than it does good, which is usually the case with government. So, and obviously Democrats and progressives supported those types of policies and supported those moves. So what does that make him? He cannot be a true Republican. That doesn't sound libertarian at all. That doesn't sound like the principles of our founding fathers whatsoever. Now look, I'm not mentioning this stuff to talk about foreign policy specifically. I'm going to save that for another show. But I just wanted to show you an example of how the Republican Party has moved far away from the principles of limited government, free market economics, individual liberty, and personal responsibility. They have slowly morphed into the warmongering, big government, interventionist twin of their progressive brothers and sisters. A good recent example of this is John Boehner, the Speaker of the House. This guy is amazing, okay? And I don't mean that in a good way. He is actually my district representative in Ohio. The man who has the power of the purse, John Boehner, Speaker of the House. He has tried to repeal Obamacare 40 times, that I know of, 40 times. But he never once cut off the funding to the program, even though Congress had this power and could have prevented this law from taking effect. Not only did he fail there, but he has repeatedly claimed to be for a reduction in government spending, yet has voted in favor of raising the debt ceiling several times. And this last time that he didn't even fight for concessions. He just gave in. This man is a progressive, and he has an R next to his name. Think about it, people. The problem is not Democrat versus Republican. They're both the same people. The problem is liberty-minded folk versus progressive big government. That's the problem. Let's take Marco Rubio, another good example. Look at his take on illegal immigration. The guy, if I remember correctly, came out and said that he was against illegal immigration and that he would never support giving people amnesty. Then turns around, gets together with John McCain, one of the worst progressives in the Republican Party, and crafts a freaking amnesty bill to try to give everybody who's here illegally citizenship. He said one thing, and he did another. He said he was a Republican, a conservative, a lover of freedom, that he would protect our country's borders, that he would not support giving illegals amnesty because of the dangers it inherently could present for our country. And then turns around and does it anyway. In fact, he spearheads the dang movement. He was never a Republican. He was a progressive, hiding behind the ideology of a liberty-minded, liberty-loving individual. Again, the point I'm trying to make here is the problem is not Democrats or Republicans, it's both. They're Republicrats. We need people in office who stand on principles. They're not concerned with playing politics. We need individuals like George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, who understood the concepts of freedom and liberty. We as American citizens need to stop voting based on the letter next to someone's name. This is just stupid. Instead, we need to focus on finding out exactly what our representatives and candidates for office actually believe. We need to start paying more attention to their voting record in Congress and hold them accountable. I mean, are they voting in accordance to the belief system they claim to hold to? If they aren't, why? Did they lie to us? Have they received some type of revelation that suddenly made this look clearer to them? If so, and it's the truth, why not share it? Enlighten the rest of us. Truth be told, it's because they care more about politics and power than they do about what's good for this country. And the problem is, we feed into their addiction to power by constantly sticking to this two-party system and not accepting candidates from outside of this system who may very well hold to the principles of freedom and liberty, both socially and economically, that we need to jumpstart this country back in the right direction. But instead, we look at the D and the R. And anyone who believes differently than the D and the R has no chance in hell of getting anywhere. Now that's pathetic. That's sad. And that is never what this country was intended to be. If we don't start digging deeper, raising the standards for the quality of character that these individuals must possess in order to, get our vote, we are in for more of this same mess that we have right now, and ultimately the destruction of our nation. It's up to you and me. It's up to you and me to fix this. I have just started my journey toward libertarianism. But in reality... Oh, excuse me, guys. Left my phone on. But in reality, I have been holding to these principles for a long time, and I just did not realize it. I don't think a part of me wanted to realize it, because libertarians tend to have a bad reputation in the public eye. They're kind of the black sheep. And nothing could be further from the truth, because when you study libertarian economics, Austrian economics, free market principles, when you study civil liberties and the rights guaranteed to us by the Constitution, you start to see that a lot of what you hold to as a conservative doesn't really line up. It doesn't go all the way. If you follow your logic as a conservative all the way out, you actually see that you do support government intervention in the public, in the lives of private citizens, to some degree. I don't want that at all. I want the maximum amount of freedom possible, the smallest central federal government possible. I'd rather have most of the power belong to states and let states decide a lot of the issues that we see today. And I don't know, there's just so much that I'm learning about this, and I'm starting to see the holes in the logic and thought of conservatism. And now that doesn't mean that I think all conservatives are bad or anything. You know, I think that we have as a libertarian, I have a lot in common with conservatives, and I think that for the most part, we want most of the same things. But there are some big differences, and that's it. I just don't think conservatives go far enough to put limits on the federal government. And I think a lot of that has to do, again, with this stupid addiction to the two-party system. We are just so wrapped up in, well, is that person a Democrat or a Republican? I've heard so many older people say, well, he's a Republican, so he's a good guy. Really? Just because the guy says he's a Republican doesn't even mean he's really a Republican. Most of them, as I've stated here, aren't. I mean, there were 28 Republican congressmen, I think it was congressmen, I'm not sure if there were senators thrown in that or not, that voted to increase the debt ceiling again without a fight. Really? Guys, increasing your debt is not the way to decrease federal spending and start paying off our debt. Borrowing more money is not how you pay off debt. You cut spending and apply that money towards your debt. I mean, it's basic economics here. This is not, you don't have to be a genius to do this. And yet these people, they didn't even fight for it. Instead, they just went ahead, let's go ahead and raise the debt ceiling. Let's just do it. Let's just get it over with. How sad. How sad. And these people claim to be free market, liberty-loving Republicans. They're Republicrats. Both parties are the same. They're progressives. We need to stop looking at the R and the D and look at principles. Look at the content of someone's character. Are they truly for liberty? Does their voting record match the belief system that they claim to hold? That takes time and effort. We have to actually watch the debates. We have to look at their record. We have to look at their involvement with nonprofit groups and how they've run their business. We have to look at all of these things and find out, do these people really buy into what they claim to believe? If they aren't true free market capitalists, I don't know. It's, then they're progressive. I mean, it's just that simple. All right, guys, that's my little rant for now. That's the first part of the show here. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and take a quick break. Then we're going to come back and talk about some cool stuff going on in the news and some weird stuff going on in the news. There's always weird stuff going on in the news. But I just wanted to, express my distaste for the Republicrats that have the majority of the offices in our government today, and how we as a people need to stop buying into the two-party system, stop looking at the R and the D, and start looking at principles and the content of people's characters. Guys, it's critical. If we want to save this nation, we've got to put more effort into choosing the right people to put in office. And we've got to take all these crappy, crazy people who are in there now, and we got to kick them out. But it's imperative that we make sure that the replacements we put in that office are of the highest caliber in both character and ideology. People who love freedom. It's necessary. All right, guys, I'm taking a break, getting some water. I will be right back.